by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there!
People throwing shit, and I mean, when you're a young kid, you think, I mean, you don't think about littering. You really don't. And like
people
now,
don't think about littering as adults, man. You're right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I would not do
it. All I see is litter.
Like if I have something in my hand that I need to throw away, I'm like, I mean, I might, for a convenience thing, I might just be like, well, I could just drop this. But then I'm thinking, I'll just put it in my pocket and throw it away later. Like, why? I see people just throw, like, you know, bags of chips or something like that, and they're obviously just dropping them because they don't give a shit. And it, I mean, it kind of fucking annoys me, man. It kind of makes it's just like, what are you like? There are receptacles for this. And what are you, just a lazy piece of shit? And that apparently, yes.
Yeah. And they don't.
It's just gross to me now. I mean, just throwing stuff, or even people just flicking like cigarette butts out of the window of their car because they don't want to dirty their car. It's like, you fucking bag of shit. You bag of fucking pus.
And it's all the streets are littered. Oh my God.
I kind of look at that in the same way as this woman. The title of this was "Woman Fashionista Caught on CCTV Doing a Massive Poo in a Lift in China." Fashionista. And it's like, if you're going to take the time to wear nice clothes, find a fucking toilet. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you know what? That you really, really look great today in that dress. Did you shit somewhere and not wipe? You know, it's like, there's got to be, if you're going to dress, I mean, and the people are people. I mean, people, but what is it? It's like they don't, the women don't care whether they smell like that because the dudes won't care.
I guess so.
I guess that's what it is, because like, you know, you see so many things. I mean, you see so many things in society, you know, like women that really, really shouldn't be wearing things that they're, you know, they get to a certain point, whether it's, you know, in size or whether in age, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't be wearing that. I mean, I think we all think it, you know, and obviously if you say it, you know, somebody, you know, a female or, you know, woman's going to be like, don't shame her. But it's like, you shouldn't be wearing that. It's not, it's not flattering. It's like, it's not flattering. You must know that doesn't look good. You must know not to poo in Lyft. And if you do, you might want to stick a roll of toilet paper in the crack of your ass.
Or carry something in your purse, right? Something to freshen up.
Oh my God!
Carry a thing of baby wipes with you, or something. I don't know,
like you know, a bidet or something, like a mobile bidet or something to clean I don't know, man. I don't know about you, but just an unkept cracker, that's not clean. You go to the beach and you get sand in your ass. It's like, I'm not down with having sand in my ass, and these people are crapping and not wiping, and then just going about their business. Oh, I'm going to a photo shoot. You didn't wipe. Oh, it's okay. It's part of Fecal magazine. Fecal.
Right, I just squeeze my butt cheeks tight. It just chaps it all in there until I get to a shower.
Maybe, dude. Maybe they figured out a way to just be like, they just shat, and then it's just like they have a self-cleaning friggin', crack. That could be something that they have.
Even a cat licks their own ass. I mean, they got to do something to clean it, but
maybe
otherwise it gets itchy. Like, oh man, that's nasty.
Yeah, it can't be something that you wanna feel like when you're when you're in your daily routine. It's like, oh yeah, well, but I guess everybody does it, so it doesn't matter. They get used to the smell of their own matter.
And if everybody has a shitty ass, then nobody can even recognize it, right? It doesn't even.
and then they can come out. They can create markets or a show called Fecal Matters.
Fecal. Feces Matters.
Fecal Matters Magazine. Fecal Matters Weekly.
Yeah, just say like, well, the fecal matter on this side of town kind of smells a little rosy. Yeah. These people have a better diet.
Yeah, maybe their diets are so, good with that it doesn't smell as bad. But I mean, you can't. I mean, the body processes things, and it's waste. It's going to have some kind of.
It's going to have an odor. It has a bad odor. And I don't care where you are.
It's got it exactly. It's
or who you are. That's nature's way of saying, don't touch this.
Yeah.
This is for the flies. Okay.
Bizarre, man. I don't know, man. And
most people are totally unaware of
this. This is concerning.
They're completely, totally unaware of it. But if you talk to people in Southeast Asia, okay, that have been civilized, and maybe they've been civilized for a period of the last 50 years in parts of China, and people that have actually that have lived in the cities, they were smaller, but they were civilized centers. Mm-hmm. You got all these people that come in and are just like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Wow.
It's like, well, these people, like, they didn't grow up in that, and it's totally foreign to them. Mm-hmm. To them, it's like, I can't, they're like, the body doesn't even shit naturally unless you're in a squatting position. We'll get a squatty potty.
That's right, man.
That's all. Then you can sit on the toilet and you'll be in that natural position and it'll flow out.
I'm going to say I've been using one for a while, man. And it's, right. And we talked about it because, like, we got one over here. And then I was just like, yeah, I got one of these squatty potties. And we're like, yeah, I heard about that. And, and then you were like, it makes sense. It makes sense.
I think I told you about it when I first saw the thing about it. I was like, oh, man, check out this thing, Squatty Potty. Does that really work? And I tried it. I was like, it does work. It's pretty good.
It's $20. They're probably cheaper now. But it's good stuff. Every bathroom should have one.
Put your body in that natural position and it'll flow easier.
Yeah, less disease, less disease, things like that. Because you were even saying that the unnatural positioning can cause structural damage.
Or a waist back up, and then you wind up with constipation and stuff like that. And then the more you do it, when you're younger, it's less of a problem. But as you get older, it's more important that you be in a natural position.
You heard it here, everybody. You heard it here. We're not selling squatty potties.
No, we're not any endorsements, so we should, right?
You should. But
hey, Squatty Potty, you should be paying us a royalty. You're going to sell it.
And then they got that thing. I don't know if you said. Probably was like within the last 5 years that poo-pourri. Did you ever hear that?
Oh yeah, I heard of that.
It's like a spray where you just kind of like, and you spray it in the toilet, and then boom, everything smells like roses. There's
encapsulates the smells, and when you flush, it all goes down. So
yeah, it just rocks it, man. It's rocking. Or do you spray before? Do you spray before or do you spray after? I think it's before.
You spray before.
Right.
It creates a film so that gases can't release out or something.
Nowhere else on the interwebs are you going to get this kind of helpful information.
Right.
Squatty potties, poopery, and don't shit in a fucking lift. A lift. They call it a lift over there. We call it elevators here. But yeah. I mean, and then that would change it. That would change it from an elevator to a hellevator. If you walked in there, you'd be like, oh my God, you know. So yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I think I'm seeing the plan for the end of humanity, and it's a pile of shit.
Basically,
with
yeah.
disease in it, and it's going to require. I don't know. So yeah, scary stuff. Scary stuff.
And all civilizations have been through this. I mean, sanitation is the most important factor of whether or not your civilization can survive, right?
That's right.
I mean, Rome understood this. This was the whole thing about they were the first ones to build sanitation.
Do you think these people
they understood this?
You think they were kept in a state of like third, fourth world behavior on purpose? You know, like, I mean, there's areas out there that people are just kind of, living off the land and doing certain things, but you would think that they wouldn't shit where they sleep. They wouldn't, do their business where they eat, things like that, like dig a hole, go dig a hole, make it happen there, hide it. And, that's good. But I'm pretty sure that they don't crap where they eat or they sleep, but the fashionista wasn't sleeping in the elevator. So
no, I don't think they do that. I think that when they live in the countryside, you just go outside.
Even a dog doesn't do that, right?
Right. I mean, literally, they're like, oh, you behave like an animal, right? You have no concern and that's part of like them as a society over there. Yeah. Like we have to inflict very severe punishment to make an example of these people, so others will think twice and not do it.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, I guess I have to use a toilet now. And that's what they're in the process of doing now, trying to rein in, these attitudes that the people have. Now, if you spread those people out to the rest of the world and they haven't been trained, you're talking you're going to destroy civilization.
Right.
Because you will create disease, rampant disease, and it's not good. Mm-hmm. It's not good at all. So, but we're living with we're living in a time where, because nobody wants to be accused of being insensitive anymore. Nobody can talk in terms of reality.
Yeah, if you can control what people say, then ultimately you can control what people think.
And what people do,
and then obviously what they will and will not do,
and what people will not do,
and what they what you do or what you don't do.
Don't do or do whatever you do.
And that was one of the things that when I saw De Blasio on Carlson, he was like, his main thing was mental health, and then he was concerned that technology was going to. Technology was going to destroy, workers, and that people wouldn't be able to work, and that was one of these things. And Carlson was like, well, he said, I really appreciate that particular thing, So, yeah, I'll just carry on. Just come on back.
Okay.
And so, boom, it's like, De Blasio's there saying that he doesn't want this to happen. And then Carlson's like, well, I can agree with you on that, but why aren't you punishing people from, defecating and all these other things? San Francisco is becoming a place of just fecal concerns, I guess you could say, fecal matters. Fecal matters. And so it just largely makes it's making sense. It really is making sense that in these times that as a clash of civilizations and, with which is just another form of divide and conquer, when you're moving people from an area that they don't have the things that most civilized things. And Greg, I'm just repeating that, as we're moving in a time where divide and conquer, it becomes such in an even more elevated and becoming even more weaponized that people would, start defecating and start doing things, that are not civilized, because civilization is under attack.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that would be, that pissing, outside and number oneing and number twoing, and then sometimes number threeing if you add them together. Is just something now that, they're loosening up on, just like with marijuana. They're like, well, if you get caught with a certain amount of marijuana, then it's not, they're loosening up on these particular. Not that I want anybody to be arrested or fined for having drugs. It's just that now you can see some of these things are. Mm-hmm. Some of these things are loosening up, and some of these things that would before be a concern for law enforcement they're now being told, it's not so much of a concern anymore. Yeah, but that guy's over there, he's shitting on a baby. How do you know the baby doesn't like it? It's like it was really funny. I was watching, a little bit of Netflix, and there's this woman that's on there. She was the woman that was on. She was at one of the correspondence dinners. Her name is Michelle Wolf. I don't know if you ever saw that. But she's very, I think she's just like kind of strangely, like uniquely attractive. I don't know if you can pull her up there. Her name is Michelle Wolf, and she did the first time that I ever became aware of her, she was at the correspondence thing, and she starts talking about Trump, and she's talking about everything, and then she's talking about the people that were, she's like, you guys are making money you made money off of Donald Trump, and she was like, I think you love him. And she was just like really just kind of like really cutely, very coyishly shaming them for, and I was just like, wow, this is really cool, And of course, some of her stand up is, about abortion and, just really kind of crazy, awful of feminist stuff. But sometimes she says things that are pretty funny and profound. So
a funny female comedian. I don't that have to be first. I've never.
Yeah, I mean,
I've never found any female comedian to be funny in the very. Yeah. None. Zero.
It's getting to that.
It's not a female thing.
They have a voice, Greg. But
so
she says something.
Like Mary Sue's, right?
Mary Sue's, yeah. And she says something like she put a picture of an otter on Twitter or one of these platforms. This is what I thought. I just thought that the story was kind of funny. It was like, and she kind of delivers it in a way that it was kind of funny. She's no George Carlin. Let me just say that. Let me just preface that by saying she's no George Carlin or Georgette Carlin. So she says she gets a reply from this woman that says, "I think that you should rethink your whole otter thing. I don't know if you know this, but otters they rape baby seals."
Oh, that is so utterly ridiculous.
I know, dude, but it's just like the way she said it. I'm going to send it to you because I think that you'll after hearing it. But she's like, she said, "You don't know me. maybe that's what I like about them. It was just so pervertedly,
trying,
just insane that she said, I didn't know that there was consent in the animal kingdom. Just like these crazy things. It's like that you would pull up from but again, I think it's funny because it's just pulling up how absurd that the whole thing is. Like you could post anything and then somebody's going to have an issue with it. Somebody's going to say, and then she goes into like different, like kind of weird directions with it that, I thought it was and I think she kind of opened with it. So it was like, and at the same time she says, everybody's just looking for somebody to hate. So I think it was just really just kind of like an appropriate thing where she's very good at doing some of those things, but then she goes through the whole abortion thing where she'll just gladly be like, well, it was a great experience or something, So where she feels that she has to do that to kind of negate from some of the intellectual gifts that she has that it kind of gets denigrated from, from this other approach that, is unnecessary to even say. It's like, hey, if you're going to do something with your life, do it. If that's what you feel like you need to do, might not be the best decision. It might be a great decision. Whatever you feel, do it. Don't let anybody fucking tell you anything. You got to deal when you get to wherever you go and your creator's there and says, hey, I'm looking at this list.
Do as thou wilt, right?
Yeah.
Then again, it's like you got to reinforce the do as thou wilt to degrade people so there's no consequences to their actions.
Mm-hmm. There was another movie that kind of pointed that out to a certain extent, but it was called, I think Meryl Streep was in it and Albert Brooks was in it. Defending Your Life, it was called, I think.
Oh, I remember.
Did you ever see that one? Yeah, that was
years ago. Yeah,
that was somewhat interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of like a joke, joking on like what happens when you have to sit there and defend, the decisions that you made. So it's kind of brilliant, but then there's the dark side and the light side of any of these different things that we see. But that if we didn't have a dualistic world, then, where would we be? Where without seeing both sides? But I think the problem is, or the challenge is people being able to see both sides. I think that's it. And understanding both sides of things, and then when you do that, then you can understand that you're being manipulated. And those that understand the duality of things know how to manipulate people widely, like bringing the.
And they might be doing it also to show us that to elevate rationality,
right,
in people's minds. Mm-hmm. If they only see one side of things, it's like the peasants in China that go to the cities that don't know how to use a toilet. They haven't rationalized to themselves in their minds that is a bad thing.
Yeah, maybe they can't crap any other way, dude.
And so they think, they look at a toilet as being an irrational way of defecating.
And maybe,
that's not the way you're supposed to do it.
Maybe they can't. I'm just thinking of that now, and it's just my brain just exploded. Maybe they've been crapping that way so long that they can't crap on a toilet.
I told you. That's what give them squatty potties and train them with that so they have their, Well, they started with toilets without toilets, just holes in the floor. You go into a bathroom in China, and a lot of places just have a hole in the floor. And you shit in the hole.
Right.
And you're like, well, what? You squat down, you take a dump in the hole. That they can do because it's natural to them.
Right.
But sitting on a device, sitting on a porcelain throne, is like I can't. How do I shit this way? I can't. I've never done that before. And they look, it's so unnatural for them.
Or at least give them like a plank or something. Like something that jots off the front of it so that if you're, you can stand on it.
Or something. I don't, whatever. Porta potties just, I don't know, stand on it, squat down in a standing, you know.
And that's what
whatever.
somebody was saying that. Like sometime within the last 10 years, somebody was just like, how come these people can't, they were like, I forget who it was. We were having a conversation. They were like, how come these people can't shit in the toilet? Why do they have to shit on the toilet? Like, you know, like they can't get their business inside the toilet. It's all over the place because maybe they're standing on the toilet.
Yeah,
and
they're squatting over the toilet not to do it. Just oh
my god, the issues of our fecal matters. I think I'm just going to change the podcast to fecal matters.
Fecal matters. It's Christmas, and we're sitting here talking about shit. We're just talking shit on Christmas.
Merry shitness. I mean, let's face it.
But therein lies one of the big problems with our world as we're looking at it today, and. They're like, how do we bring rationality to these people's minds while still keeping them in a state of dis-ease?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult problem for, and it's always led to previously, it's led to like plagues and diseases and, the just terrible, terrible conditions.
Yeah.
But then they learned, I guess, after the Civil War, and said, well, we've got to bring sanitation in. Otherwise, people are going to continue to want to migrate, towards, get out of cities and get into places where they can live, they can live out a full fulfilling life. But they don't want that to happen because if they haven't done the surveys, how do you know, like, they're not sitting on top of a huge gold reserve? All right, they got to survey everything first. That's why they had the Civil War. That's my opinion. I think the theory is starting to get legs a little bit, but it makes perfect sense because they had so abused people for so long. They were desperate to get a covered wagon and get the hell out of there and migrate west. Go out, there's plenty of land out there. Just go, go wipe out the Indians or whatever, or maybe figure out a way to live with them in peace. Build a little homestead. You could have a nice life. Grow your food, hunt your food, live like within nature. And they're all like, well, we can't have that. No way. What if, they're sitting on top of like something that they're sitting on top of mineral deposits?
No, they'll just go in and kill them later.
Well, when you get the whole civilization, they need to go in there and figure out where things were up front, Mm-hmm. And I guess they've certainly had technologies to do that. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing. Since you're in the Philadelphia area, there's a guy on, name is Matt. I forget the name of his channel, Consciousness something, whatever, on YouTube. And he did a couple of programs on the 1876 World Fair, the Centennial World's Fair, which was the first World's Fair.
Really?
And they built these amazing buildings for the 1876 Philadelphia World's Fair.
Really?
Absolutely amazing structures. Their main hall was 26 acres inside the building. And they built the building without support columns. So it was all trusses and everything. All these huge structures and statues they built. And this was at a time before we had diesel engines.
Right, yeah.
Before we had all this technology. How did they lift these 10-ton blocks 50, 60 feet in the air without the cranes and the diesel technology and all these things? And they built all these buildings.
Space aliens.
Just kidding. Right.
Ancient aliens.
How did they do this?
Yeah.
They built all this infrastructure, and then right after the World's Fair, they tore down virtually all the buildings.
Right.
There's only like 2 of them standing to this day. But there's some pictures. The last ones were taken down like in the 1950s. They had these enormous, they had like a horticultural center. Right. Gigantic buildings, bigger than football stadiums. I mean, huge, big glass. How the hell did they build those things? And how did they build them in less than a year? For the World's Fair. Where did they get to? Not even near railroads.
So this was in the podcast. What did he come up with?
The thesis is how'd they build that shit?
What they do?
Like how'd they build that? Even going to the City Hall in Philadelphia and the columns and structure, when that was built, it was built like in the 1890s. Like they didn't have the technology to build that building in the 1890s. How did they do that? How'd they build that shit?
Yeah, man.
The railroad station, the Grand Central, I guess the Grand Central Station in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, it is so vast. There's so much space under roof, and the roof lines are so long. How did they build that without columns? How'd they build that shit?
That's the name of the podcast. How'd they build that shit?
Yeah, if you look that up on YouTube, it's like, how'd they build that shit? And there's lots of, drawings, artist renditions of the buildings, and they were so vast, they were so huge, and it's like this is absolutely amazing. Where did the technology come from to build all those buildings, and why did they tear them down so quickly? Mainly because did they tear them down because they didn't want people to know? People would start asking questions. They had a monorail system for the World's Fair. Mm-hmm. This was one where they had steam locomotives. How do you build a monorail system? An electric monorail system. Before there was electricity. They had all this futuristic technology, a lot of stuff you think they couldn't even build this stuff today. And they can't. They can't build even a lot of these buildings that we were building 100 years ago. They can't build them anymore.
They can't go back to the moon either.
Like, what the hell? The hell they build this shit?
I'm trying to look for it in here, but if you can, I put in how did they build that World Fair, and then it said it's like 1904 World Fair.
Oh, 1876 Philadelphia World's Fair.
Let me see. 1876. World Stage. The Great Experiment.
Hold on, I could pull up the video here.
But I mean, just things that you can't even imagine that they would have been able to do back then.
Oh yeah, I mean, how did they build that shit? That doesn't make sense. I'll pull up. I'm going to pull them up here in a second. I'll send you a link to it.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, it turns out that people were pretty resourceful. And I mean, when they were talking about, I was listening to some of these podcasts. They were talking about, the pyramids and things like that, and they were saying, well, it's obvious they were friggin' giants back then. There were, like Baal, like Gilgamesh, and in these 15, 20, 25 foot people that were, that could do this, I mean, they even found bones of people that were like super tall. So, but then, there's a lot of people out there that might not buy that or believe that, but I think there were people. I mean, we're 6 feet, 8 feet tall, 7, 8 feet tall. I mean, how far out of the realm of possibility could, somebody twice that or 3 times that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily believe in space aliens.
This is one of his Quantum of Conscience.
Quantum of Conscience.
Hold on, wait. Come on.
Of consciousness? All right. Bald guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah,
He's,
same here. I see him. Yeah, that's cool. Videos. Hey, he's got quite a bit in there.
His videos on the World's Fair are really, it does the head scratcher. Like he's on something. How they built that shit? You have to go way back in some of the stuff that it.
1876.
I just sent you in the message box the exact models of the first World's Fair.
Okay.
He's got some good stuff.
Okay.
Should get him on your show. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Like the
fellow Pennsylvania boy.
Oh, so he's in the area.
Yeah, he's in the Philadelphia area.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, but it does. It's a head scratcher. Like they were building stuff way before the technology should have been available for them to build things like that. And I guess they realized, wait a minute, people might be asking too many questions, so maybe we should tear it all down.
Right.
They didn't build them as temporary, like huge, ornate fountains, 50, 60 foot in the air, big, huge, gigantic iron fountains were built. They tore it all out after the World's Fair. Why?
Did they want to cover their tracks, They
want to cover the tracks.
There's
a lot that we don't understand in this world that they're just, they give us a glimpse and then they pull it back because they're like, that would be too problematic if people figured out that, we have the capabilities of doing these things.
Right.
So maybe they have anti-gravity. Maybe they've had it for years and it's like, it would be too destructive to put out there. If people realized that they had that, they could do almost anything. And then their system of control, which is finance, wouldn't work. Like Tesla. The Tesla thing would be,
Yeah, nuclear. That would give us everything we needed.
Right. Well, they've known about nuclear. I think they've known about nuclear for thousands of years. They probably had nuclear reactors thousands of years ago. What we don't have is nuclear bombs. That's the bullshit line of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fear. It's the fear-based education camp.
Well, it's worked brilliantly for the last 75 years, 80 years.
Well, that Owen Benjamin was talking about somebody like he communicated with somebody who spoke with that, who was related to that Galen guy that you told me about.
Yeah, I think what happened is he saw my video with Jan Irving.
Oh, dude, right. Okay.
He saw. I think he saw my video with Jan Irving when I talked about is oil fossil fuel or ambiotic fuel, and I,
right.
basically blew the whole energy world. What everybody believes is energy, totally stood it on its head.
Yeah.
Because the concept is like, we're running out of this stuff. Like, actually, we're not. They need to create the scarcity to keep the value behind it. But, if we punch a hole in the ground and go deep enough, everybody can hit oil. There's plenty of it down there.
And then eventually China.
And eventually reach China. So there's a lot about the world they know about, certain people know about, others don't.
Mm-hmm.
And they play this rule in the middle, and then when things start to get a little haywire, they'll disrupt the system because, energy is the building blocks of civilization, right? You need energy to do it. So we were running out of energy, then why would we be building any more cities? We'd be preserving it just for everyday use, right? There would be no need to, because there's no need to build these skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm. What was his name? Galen?
I forgot his name. I'm having a mental block on that now. Senior moment. That was something that I heard from somebody else. Actually, I talked to an engineer from the laboratory in New Mexico. Los, what is it? What's the name? Haven't had any breakfast yet. My brain isn't working. Los Alamos.
Right.
The Los Alamos labs.
Okay.
And because I was talking about I was talking to this one guy this is when I was working in the energy sector, with my company. And
right. Galen Windsor.
Galen Windsor, that's it.
It's Galen, last name Winsor. It's on. You told me about him, and then I started watching it, and how he would explain how he was. He would be. It's swimming in this water that would be radioactive, and then I think Benjamin made sure that when he said that they. When he died of like Alzheimer's or something, but it wasn't cancer or something, because people would figure that he would die of some kind of cancer because he was exposed to all that, but he really wasn't. It really wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't.
And it's a natural substance, and it's like we've been living with it forever, and so it's not harmful. This is why, like, the animals around Chernobyl are doing just fine. They're actually, they've been fruitful and multiplied since all the humans left. The same thing in Fukushima. So all this talk that this radiation is deadly is a farce. Right. And the reason is they realize that nuclear poses the biggest threat to the energy industrial complex.
Yeah, the monopoly of charging us out the ass for air conditioning and
what I was telling him about, there was a company I was talking with this guy in Houston. I was at a conference in Houston, right?
Yeah.
And this guy was involved with a small modular reactor company. They were actually headquartered out of Colorado. And he was working with a team of engineers from Los Alamos Labs. And their thing was, if we could change the regulations, we can completely mitigate our dependency upon fossil fuels, and we could actually go to an electric-based system, because charging batteries and all that stuff would be nothing.
Right.
Okay. You could have battery-powered cars because you could plug it in. You could have small modular reactors, what they use in nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers. The Navy, military has been using small modular reactors since they were created. The Army has them. All the branches of the military have them. When they set up a camp for all of the soldiers over in Afghanistan, or when they were in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, all the energy for those facilities, those were all from small modular reactors.
Yeah.
Where did they get all the electricity to build all the shit they did? It's like one small modular reactor can power 20,000 homes. And they're perfectly safe. Literally, the military's been using them for 80 years, and there's no incidents of any problems at all.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
They use them on aircraft carriers. People don't get sick. It's just it's a perfectly safe, clean, efficient way. And if they blow up, they're not nearly as harmful. That all that thing was put in as a fear base because they knew that the value of the uranium, that they could perpetually use the rods over and over again. Go from a freshwater reactor to a saltwater reactor. And a rod could last like 500 years. And they didn't want to have that, so they had to create this boogeyman scenario, because the deal is that the stakeholders, right, the ratepayers, actually owned the uranium. And they know the value is in the uranium, so they had to classify it as waste. And so when they want to, dig a hole in the ground or bore into a mountain and say, this is where we're going to store all our nuclear waste, I call bullshit on that. They're putting empty barrels in those fucking things. All right? Because they only use less than 5% of the constituted energy in a rod. Okay, in a reactor rod. Mm-hmm. The rest of it, they could turn around and go, okay, let's put it in salt water. Then it reconstitutes itself to 100% again. It could be used over and over and over again. We've mined all the uranium we probably need, probably for the next 5,000 years. Mm-hmm. We just need to get off of our high horse here and say, we do this, and we don't have to have these power transmission plants. You can have local, you could have a local SMR, small modular reactor, for every building, for every community, and we could get away from this energy control grid that we have.
Yeah.
And then we only have to rely upon liquid fossil fuels or liquid energy, which is never going to go away because it's the best form of transportation in a liquid form. Because you only need to run it through a pipeline or a rail car to transport. So it's the easiest, most cost-efficient means of energy transportation. Look at the electric grid. It's the most inefficient, most expensive way to transfer energy from one point to another.
But very profitable.
Well, profitable as long as you can absorb that into your system. But when you come to into a societal problem that we have now, where the debts have surmounted to such an extent, you got to start thinking about alternatives. If we can eliminate that, we would reduce the cost of operation significantly.
They'll come out with something, and they'll make it look like it's a new invention, and the reason for it will be, we got to clean up all of this shit because people aren't using toilets anymore. they create this new thing.
The whole thing about the energy thing is all a farce. I mean, people think like energy is polluting. Like, well, what do you think volcanoes are? What do you think all that black smoke coming out of volcanoes are? Those are hydrocarbons that are burning, right? They're running. Why do you think the energy for these volcanoes comes from? It comes from pools of hydrocarbon deposits that are deep down inside the earth. The earth isn't just naturally creating vulcanization. It's got a means of fueling it. And that fuel is coming from hydrocarbons.
It's an intelligent
common
design.
sense. It's an intelligent system. It's an intelligent design system.
Exactly.
And those hydrocarbons go up into the atmosphere. And what do the plants require? Carbon.
Yeah.
It feeds all the plants. Come on.
What's interesting is that, again, that kid that I was telling you about who's got the Tesla. Well, actually, he's like 30, but he looks really young. And we were talking about a couple things. And, I was just saying, or one of the guys, this one guy who's like ex-military said, well, they're taking God, right? And as soon as he said God, one of these other guys, the younger guys there, was just like, there is no God. And as soon as I heard him say that, it was just like, I knew exactly that he was a total product of, this, just educating people in a specific way to not believe in an intelligent design. That right away he kind of morphed right into evolution. And I said, this whole thing, where we are is an intelligent design. Everything about it is an intelligent design. There's a creator somewhere of this, and we're just being steered away from, we're being steered away from this because they don't want us to know what it is. They don't want us to know. And
they want to separate us from nature as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because the intelligent design is nature.
Yeah.
The natural law is undefeatable. All right.
Yep.
So they'll go and do what they can to defeat nature so they can elevate themselves to God status. But they will fail, as they've always failed before, and it's just on a bigger scale now. It's larger areas, but it's all around the world.
A lot more on the line now.
Okay, and I think like with this reset that will come, which is probably in the end will be a good thing. Half the population of this planet probably won't survive it. They won't, not because it's preordained for them not to survive it. It's just simply because they can't, because they've lost connection with their ability to survive. And
will it be the toilet users or the non-toilet users?
Well, probably. Really, that's what it's coming down to in a different metaphor of a toilet user. I mean, we have people that just shit on everything here, metaphorically, right? Yeah. Anything that's good, anything that's right, you got to shit on it, and that's what's going to happen. That's where the morality part comes in. It's like, no, you're not following the code of life, and which means that you're a cancer cell, you're an antibody, and you have to be dispatched. It's just the only way that's the only way that the organism will survive is by, extracting this, these cancer cells, rejecting these cancer cells,
the malignancy of
right.
Of,
the
destruction.
Well, I think what they understood years ago is you could quarantine it because there always has to be the outlet. Human beings being what they are, you're not going to get everybody. So you cannot allow those that don't fall into the system, or structure, and organization, you cannot allow them to fester within the organism itself. Otherwise, they become the cancer and they destroy it. But you can't eliminate them either. So what do you do?
They're useful. They have a use.
Right. So what you do is you control them by quarantining them into like Sin City. Right? We got to send them all back to Cincinnati. But that's what they used to do. They would quarantine them into a specific area. We're like, okay, here's an area you can rule, you can run, and you can see fit to do as you wish, but you can't export those values outside of your borders. And anybody in the surrounding areas that can't conform, they get sent to Sin City. It's like, survive. This is what you want. Go ahead and survive. Go ahead and survive in the pig pen. Yeah. And what they're now is we're at this point, quickly coming to this point now where we can identify those that simply that are destructive to the organism because of their mindset. There's nothing we could do with them. So we've got to put them somewhere. Where are we going to put them? And then it's always like, not in my backyard. I don't want them here. Yeah,
not in my backyard. NIMBY.
The quarantining, it's why they set up red line districts in cities, because what they did is those people who couldn't become civilized, whatever, they moved them to the ghettos.
Right.
But now the ghettos, because of location, are too valuable. Yeah. You got to get rid of them and move them somewhere else.
Well, it's like the not the Hunger Games, but the Divergent series. Did you ever see any of those? The Divergent, where the people they would have within their society, they would put them in different groups. You couldn't be divergent. The girl was divergent, but she figured out a way to make them, not see that she was divergent. But then you found out later that, there was a couple of circumstances that got her, through. But then when they were cruising around, or they were on like trains and stuff like that, you could see that there were people that were standing, that they were on the outskirts. They weren't part of society, and they were the people that you couldn't do anything with. They just didn't have any skills at all. They couldn't be put in any one of the 4 or 5 different groups. So they were just kind of like on the outskirts, like
for sure. It's another thing. It's another condition of our time. Look how they make movies about these subjects. They always have in certain ways, but they're actually trying to socially engineer, put the concept of ideas that women can be warriors. It's like nothing could be further from the truth. Maybe 1 out of 1 million can.
Yeah. Well, they're not supposed to be.
If that, but they're not supposed to be. They weren't born to be. So they make these movies with the Mary Sue characters and every leading, the heroine. It's the heroine in the movies, and it's just. And that's another thing that's driving people. I think it's starting to get driving people insane, because if they don't tell us stories that we can relate to, we won't adopt them. We won't relate to them. We won't create them. And all the propaganda you promote isn't going to work. Like, we are the laughing stock of the world. If anybody wanted to take us over, the latest round of commercials that they aired at the Army-Navy game is all you need to see. 70% of the recruiting films are all geared towards women. Women in the Marines, doing Marine stuff, firing guns in battle zones and everything. Like, are you fucking serious? We're supposed to have female warriors? Get the fuck out of here. Like, just on the common sense, people just look at that and they just know. They're like, this is fucking stupid. What really is going on? Well, because if this is about defending the Constitution of the United States, defending the United States of America, the last thing you do is put fucking broads on the front line.
Yeah, fight if you want. I can't imagine why.
If you want. That's not the way they fight. That's not, it's totally it's ridiculous. But this is where they've feminized and radicalized femininity to such a point now that how do you come back from this? Not the way things stand now, and this is the third rail. So they've, at least with the suffrage movement and the women's live movement, all that, there still was that era of femininity about it, though they tried to push envelopes. Today, it's just over the top. And so young people are seeing that, and they're going, God damn it, I want to have a family. So that's, even Donald Trump shows up. Donald Trump Jr. shows up at a college university, UCLA. Mm-hmm. Last month, he got booed off the stage because these guys are out there promoting the gay, LGBTQ, and feminist agenda and calling themselves conservatives. And so younger guys are like, fuck you, and fuck you. All right? I want to have a successful life. I grew up in a broken home, in a feminized world, and I'm fucking tired of your shit. And these are supposed to be conservatives, right? These are supposed to be people that believe in quote unquote traditional values.
Yeah, everything's flipped upside down.
It's like, well, hold on a second. Where did this all come from? That we have to, where did it go from gay rights to LGBTQ? This started under Obama. It just happened suddenly.
Which he didn't even really support in the beginning. Hillary didn't support it, and then they all just And here's the thing. And then these groups, they accepted it okay, when they should have been largely condemning. You didn't do this before, but now you are. What's your political side? But I guess they're so desperate to be accepted that they'll accept any politician that even says it, even if they're being used as a tool. That's the thing. They're using you as a tool. Identity politics, they're using you as a tool in a divide and conquer strategy, and you're willing to go along with it. Shame on you. Mm-hmm. Not shame on you because of your lifestyle. Shame on you because you are allowing yourself.
Because of your lifestyle. Because basically the pursuit of your passions is more important than your own integrity. And that's really what the bottom line is. Get over it. There are only two genders. So I don't care what you say. You're not fooling anybody with this shit. The only thing you're doing is you're pissing people off. We never dealt with that. We never dealt with that years ago. Today they're dealing with it, and it's not. I don't think it's not really translating into the masses are not adopting it as their own.
Yeah. Well, it's just becoming sad because people are allowing themselves to be manipulated. And in the long run, they're just using you as cannon fodder and boulder dash and all kinds of stuff anyway. So,
yeah. So we'll see. I think in the next 5 years, this all comes to a head because as the financial markets become more and more destabilized, which they're completely destabilized now, mm-hmm. There is no mark to market anymore. Everything now is it's totally the opposite. No, there's no price discovery.
Right.
All right. So the people that are in positions of power, and I don't blame them for doing it because somebody gives them the opportunity to borrow unlimited amounts of money virtually for free,
right.
And they could go. They're going to do it. Yeah. So, but then how do you flip that back now where they've turned this? Well, if we go to a balanced system again, it destroys the system. So it's mutually assured destruction. Yep. And it's like this across the world. It's like, wait a minute. At some point, they know that commoners are going to rise up against this. And as soon as this starts in one place, legitimately starts in one place, it's going to spread and they're going to be hung from the lampposts. And if they think they're going to get on planes and fly to New Zealand, they have another thing coming because they don't fly planes. Commoners fly those planes for them. Right. And what if the commoners say, fuck you, fly yourself? I ain't coming with you. Big deal.
Right, yeah.
Because now they start to realize, well, okay, you've trained all these people to think in terms of identity. look what you've done to their own bloodlines and their own families. All right. Now, what happens when you get the majority of let's call them white people to recognize that they have been the most abused race of people ever in this world? Okay, they're all suffering from what is it, the Helsinki syndrome, whatever it's called.
What is that? I was just thinking of that the other day. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Where
they take on the identity of their oppressors,
or
right?
their oppressors. They
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm, yeah.
They all got Stockholm syndrome. So like you got all these people out there like really believing that that they're this powerful group and they oppress other people. And it's like, no, you've all been the tools of the people with the power. This is why I tell people, look, read, if you read History of Great American Fortunes, you would understand, you would see it, but nobody reads it. Maybe out of print, it's hard to find, but you can find it on archives.org. There's PDF copies out there.
Wasn't and that was what, Gustavus Myers?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you say that they were on YouTube?
They pulled out. YouTube pulls down a lot of the books because remember, this was a guy who wrote about the facts, and at the time, based on the legal system, they couldn't go after him. So they basically tried to shame him and condemn him and relegate him to the ash heap of history and just buried his books for 100 years.
Yeah.
But it's been this sort of under thing, like, hey, kind of spells out it was not, they had the means to shut him down.
Uh-huh.
They could have shut him down back in the day, because this was during the days of the rabble-rousers, right?
Yeah.
But he wrote the definitive, well-researched. I mean, none of his stuff was questioned or denied by the aristocracy because they couldn't. So they bought up all the publication houses and basically relegated him to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But in some areas they use him because when he wrote about the history of Tammany Hall and other various things, he wasn't writing about that as being a rabble rouser. He wrote about that as like, I'm just telling the facts. I'm giving an accurate, well-documented, well-footnoted historical documentary, like doing an investigative report about how the people in this country, how the aristocracy, the American aristocracy, rose, and the relationship to the aristocracy of England, and what they used, the systems they used of mind control and subverting people, using subversion in order to gain the power and wealth that they had, and what they're doing, the steps that they'll take, and will continue to take forever in order to maintain it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, what did the aristocracy do at the time? They commissioned Napoleon Hill to write Think and Grow Rich, because they had to make the commoners think anybody can do this. Not if you're immoral, you can't do what they did, because it would fly in the face of your morality, because they were highly immoral people. And they were operating as a cult, as this level of, the secret society of people. And it was all based on nepotism and power and control and giving influence over. And then a lot of strings are tied together with somebody who's totally disconnected, with Richard Pettigrew, who was the first senator from South Dakota, who wrote his book after he finally got kicked out of Congress and the Senate. In the 1920s, he wrote a book called The Triumphant Plutocracy. And he tells everything, how the inside tracks, how it actually works in Washington, D.C. And it hasn't changed at all. It's still the same way. Yeah. It's how all the deals are done, the back channel deals and this and that. And he was a guy who totally grew up as a farm kid and believed in the quote unquote American dream, so to speak. Yeah. And he gets to Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden we're here as the traders organization, the trade association for the aristocracy.
Right.
Our job is to maintain their power because they are the people of the United States. The other people they're just commoners. They don't mean anything.
Right.
And he was shocked by that. He couldn't, with his own consciousness, he could not accept it and tried to change it from within. He was ostracized. He was, basically put out there as a kook and a nut. And then but he understood, like, I'm not going to tell the story of this until, unless he figured I'll write this book before I die. Okay.
Right.
As long as I have breath that I can fight this, I'm going to try and fight it from within.
Yeah. And
he did a pretty good job for the time that he was there, but it was it's a losing battle. The next generation of bureaucrats that come up, it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
And once they started monetizing things, then it was over, because then once they could do is pure alchemy, creating something from nothing, and be able to create unlimited amounts of money, and making the commoners the surety of the debt. And then going into bankruptcy, it was so bad in the 1920s, it led to the bankruptcy in 1933.
Yeah.
And then the restructuring of our system in 1933, which most people are completely clueless about. They have no idea. It's like you were now made the full surety of everything. Back then, it was different. It was common people, unless they had volunteered, unless they weren't, they had to be put into a corporatized system. And they knew they couldn't do it unless they had a radical shift. And that's what the Great Depression was all about, is creating the means to create the surety. And it's all based on our own voluntary servitude. That's it. It's like, this happens and continues and will continue to happen as long as the majority of people continue to volunteer for their own servitude. But if you twist words and use word magic on people, you can make them think that servitude is freedom. That's what they've done. So I would say the first steps to understanding it and unfucking yourself first is understand the world you live in. And then all of these things you could see, because it's a marketing plan, right? Everything's a marketing strategy. They pull these things up. Donald Trump is part of the marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for us to see it because we're not in the boardrooms, in part of the discussions, but they knew they needed to bring somebody up who would be the pressure release valve, the Alex Jones of the political age. And that's exactly, he plays that role to a T.
Yeah, he's good at it.
He's very good at it. And then he could sit there in everybody's face and basically talk about the prosperity of a foreign body, a foreign country, and make that the emphasis of his entire presidency, which is all he is about the prosperity of Israel. That's all he talks about. His State of the Union address last January, it was an hour and a half long, and literally a third of it, 30 minutes of it, was all about Israel. Like, what the fuck does Israel have to do with our State of the Union? Nothing. And if we really were concerned about this country, then what he should be doing is saying all tech companies now are prohibited from exporting their technology to any foreign country, whether they're an ally or not. Okay? So fuck you with they're our greatest ally.
Yeah.
The reality is now you're going to export all that off, and then these people have been proven over and over again, but he's part of he's thoroughly controlled by them. He was brought to power by Sheldon Adelson.
Yeah.
Okay, who's probably the Meyer Lansky of our time. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Certainly, Lansky is one of his heroes. You know that. Because Lansky was the one who set up Las Vegas to begin with.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I know about Murder Incorporated, but I don't know the breadth and the width of it. I can only imagine.
There's a lot out there about Lansky, and a lot of it, he's been referenced in so many movies, from The Godfather, all the way down. They're letting you know that these are the real mobsters. All right. Now these mobsters have gotten their full agreements and cooperations with governments around the world. And we do not stand a chance because they are not dealing in the realm of honor and morality. They are dealing completely in the world of deception. And this is why, even people like within the military are even starting to warn these guys now, because they can see what's happening. They see that Trump is controlled.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody had hoped. Remember after he got elected, I said, we will see. I'm not saying that he's going to be a great president. I'm just saying that we dodged a bullet with Hillary.
Yeah.
Okay. And they didn't, the powers that be didn't like it, but this could be a faction. There could be a faction saying, wait a minute, hold on a second. These guys, they can't come out and say it because they probably get whacked if they did. They might have been saying, like, you cannot turn over the control of the government over to the Lansky crime family. And the election of Trump, that's exactly what happened. It's all being controlled by the Lansky crime family now. Not just individual influence here and there. They're controlling everything. And
Derp.
People don't understand organized crime because it's been glorified in the movies. They think it's great.
Sopranos.
The Sopranos and all that, yeah.
Yeah.
Even The Godfather. It's watched The Godfather again a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Freaking great movies. But watching it through eyes now, because I haven't seen it probably in 20 years, maybe 15 years the last time I watched it. And just like watching it with fresh eyes and seeing how the story is laid out, they're laying it out right for you in those movies, who the real power is and all that. It's like, wow. Like I always said before, that was the last movie, the original Godfather was the last movie where we had a virtuous woman. Abalone, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That she represented the virtuous woman, and they blew her up. They blew her up real good.
They blowed her up in pieces.
They blew her up real good. And there hasn't been a virtuous woman in a movie ever since. Remember like when Michael Corleone goes over to Italy, after he shoots the cop and the other mobster?
It's been a while for me.
He's got to get away from her for a while, and he courts. First, he has to approach her father and ask her father's permission. Under family supervision, and their meeting and their courtship. It was only a couple minutes in the film, but I remember as a kid when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, I want a girl like that. I want a girl like that." Everybody, but I grew up at a time where there were girls that were like, and you had to, you had to almost go to. I remember when I was a little kid, I wanted to take this girl out. I was only like 13 years old. My father asked me if I asked her father for permission.
Okay.
He said, you can't take her out unless you go ask your dad if it's okay. So I had to go to her house and ask her father for permission to take her to go see the Poseidon Adventure.
Oh, the Poseidon, huh?
Poseidon Adventure. And he said, okay. What are you going to do? Well, we're going to go down to the Washington Cinema. We're going to get some popcorn and all of that. And her sister came to the movies with us, and she had to sit back her teenage sister. Mm-hmm. Because we were only like 12, 13 years old. Right. But her sister, who was like 17, sat back like 4 or 5 rows behind us, right? Mm-hmm. But she had to keep an eye on us.
Right.
Okay? Today, there's no reference to that at all. But you know what? That was a way where it felt really good.
Yeah.
And
everybody was on board.
And that was very common. That's the way you did it, years ago. And so, and every man looks at that. If you look at that movie and you go, wow, that, would she have left him? No. The only thing we've gotten since then is Diane Keaton. Some, satanic American whore. There's a scene in the movie where after he goes to Italy and then he gets married, Diane Keaton, she shows up at the Corleone house.
She must have been young there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Diane Keaton, but she shows up because she hasn't seen or heard from Michael. So she wants to talk to Robert Duvall and say, "I need to see Michael." She shows up and she gets out of the limousine wearing this bright red overcoat, black shoes, and a red hat. So she's in red and black satanic colors. So she represented at that point, because that was not by accident in wardrobe. They said, no, we have to have her stand out in contrast colors. Because anytime they put a red and black image on screen, they're telling you that is the satanic nature. They're telling you she represents Satan. And she gets out and she's like, I want to see Michael. Now she's the satanic figure in the film. She's 10 times more evil than Michael Corleone. And people didn't even see it. She gleefully put it in his face that she aborted his son. And says, I killed him. Right? And that's what Michael Corleone slaps her across the face.
Right.
But it was a very telling movie, and ever since then, every movie, we've gotten Diane Keaton. We haven't gotten any Apollonia since then. None.
Right. I guess I had to show you what, like the duality.
The duality, and that's where they were taking the culture, and that's where it ripped.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to watch them.
Watch them again. Definitely, they're great. But you could see how they set this whole thing up, like with the Italian mob as the front, and that's what they did. The Italian mob was used as a front to cover the real power behind them.
Right.
And that was the Purple Gang, and the Brofmans, and the Mayanskis, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so this is. It never went away. It's now become more organized, more legit. Yeah. And now what they've done is they've allowed these guys to say, well, you got big companies out there like AT&T, right? What can we do about AT&T? Well, if we put our guys in there and we do stock buybacks and bleed out the economy, we could suck hundreds of billions of dollars out of these companies, trillions of dollars. Yeah. And then we'll just split and go to Israel or go someplace else after people figure it out, and it's too late.
Yeah.
But it's and this is the state of dis-ease that we have, across the whole system, where our whole system has always been based upon retail investors can get into a market, they could actually look at company structures, analyze them, and they could say, I want to put this money into this company because this is where this value of this company is going to grow, and I can grow with it.
Right.
Right. And that's how a lot of money was created over the last 100 years. But now they've taken that away. These people that buy into the stock, you spend $1,500 on Amazon stock. I'm telling you, you may think it's, I'm doing really great. I mean, but that $1,500 stock could become $5 overnight.
Yeah.
And at some point it will. And that's why Bezos got the divorce and split his assets and took half of it out of his name legally under the only way he could break up his assets that much and protect that much of his wealth was to get a divorce from his wife.
Right.
That was it.
That.
Otherwise, he stands to lose it all, because when they do come after him, if the angry mob does come, they're going to look and say, who are these people? All the Zuckerbergs and the Bill Gates and all these guys are going to get strung up. Because they have to, because and the people they represent, they're only the front people. There's a whole group of people behind them. They're never going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're going to throw us. That was the deal. That's the contract they signed in blood with the devil. Okay? When Jeff, whatever his real last name is, it certainly is Bezos. All right, came to them, and where they tapped him on the shoulder and said, how would you like to be the head of this big organization we're going to set up, online retailer, blah, 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 all these things, and you're going to be virtually put all of the retail establishment out of business, destroy all this competition, and destroy American manufacturing. and we're going to give you government contracts, and we're going to tout you as the richest man in the world, which is just why people even believe that is beyond me.
Right.
Like, this guy hasn't paid a dividend. If he's the richest man in the United States, then why how come he hasn't paid a dividend to any of his shareholders in going on 30 years, in 27 years, or whatever? Okay, This is fucking ridiculous. You know.
Right. You were saying that before about certain financial aspects of Amazon that were.
Yeah, it's a fraud company. They don't produce anything, and they don't pay a dividend. If you and I formed a company and we did what he was doing, we'd be in jail. So why is he able to get away with it? He's getting away with it because the banks are supporting him, and they're basically pounding or padding the valuation of Amazon. Right. So shareholders are saying, well, you don't have to pay me a dividend so long as the value of my shares go up. I have the option to sell it at any time. So, Amazon's $1,500 a share. I bought Amazon in 1993 for $14 a share.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I bought 1,000 shares back then. Boy, I wish I still had it. Sell it now. Yeah. But when I sold my shares, I sold it in the late 90s. They were on their way out. They were one of the companies, like, how does this company even survive? They're cooking their books. There's no price to earnings ratio. They don't make any money. So how are they doing it? Well, if somebody came to you and said, here's a credit card, you can spend as much as you want on the credit card and even borrow money to make your payments on the debt you incur. Well, how much can I borrow to pay? What do you mean? You spend as much as you want, and when you have to make a payment, borrow the money against the card and make the payment. Well, how long will I be able to do that? Indefinitely, until we tell you can.
Eventually,
you go on forever. You mean is there a limit to how much I could borrow? Well, no, we're telling you, you could borrow as much as you want. It doesn't matter. You want to borrow $1 billion? Go ahead and borrow $1 billion. Okay? We'll charge you 1% on the $1 billion loan, and then we'll turn around and you can borrow money to make the payments. Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great if you could be the richest man in the world if somebody gave you that ability. Well, who else has there's a class of people that have that ability. And the commoners have not figured out yet that Jeff Bezos did not start this company in his garage.
Yeah.
Okay? He was a figurehead, a person, the same thing with Zuckerberg, the same thing with
Gates.
Google. All these companies are exactly the same. And they're like, you look at Facebook. Facebook doesn't make any money. You really think they're making money on ad revenue? Please.
That's what Alien Boy said. Because how do you make money if you don't charge people? Well, Senator, we run ads. I'm a fucking alien.
Okay, well, disclose your books. Open your books. What kind of ad revenue are you taking in? I'll tell you what. You're taking in some ad revenue, but not nearly enough to finance an operation. And at the level that they've reached, they're doing it because they were given a credit card.
Actually, it's a database of everybody in the world, hopefully, and then we'll know everything about them. Whether they poo on elevators or they whatever. It's a database.
Endless monitoring.
I'm an alien,
right? And everybody thinks, oh, wow, this is great. We live in these great times. And it's like, well, it is the best of times. It is the worst of times. There's some great things about today, but most of it, unfortunately, is just, it's ridiculous.
Merry Kwanzonika.
Yeah. Every day's a holiday. Hey,
every day's a holiday.
But everybody knows the undercurrent. Everybody knows. There's a guy I really respect. He's a professor at Cornell University. He goes on some finance shows once in a while. Mm-hmm. And his name is David Cullen. And if you look him up, he's really good. He's just a guy who was, he's an educated chemist, right? Not financial background, but just representing the average middle to upper middle class, educated man in the United States, right? And made a lot of money in the stock market, and people started respecting his opinion. And he's not a wizard or anything, but I heard him on an interview on a Wall Street for Main Street interview. That's another YouTube channel. He was on just the other day. And he was railing about the central banks, about the Federal Reserve, how dumb they are, and blah, 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 blah. But even doesn't get it, that the game is always been rigged, right? But he represents probably 90% of the retail investors out there. The mindset that the system was at one time based, which it was, because it had the illusion of being based on honest accounts and measures, but is now starting to realize that it wasn't, and that it's all risk on now. What's the end game in all this? And so when you have him and millions upon millions of other retail investors around the world that start to say, I don't want to play this anymore, okay? The concept of competition, of wins and losses, that gambling thing, that really melts deep into the human psyche. Because we all look at that and say, I don't mind taking chances, but I just want to know that my chances, that my earnings, my winnings per se, came from because I make good decisions. And that encourages them to do more research and to, educate themselves on things, to make sure that the companies they're dealing with, that there's honest brokers, make sure that the books and the accounting and everything is done properly. When you see an environment today and you see these companies like Amazon with these enormous valuations, and the fact that there's no, the little guys are getting crushed out of operations, right? Under no circumstances will they allow entrepreneurs to come up.
Yep.
They start to say, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. They're about to pull a fast one. I may have done very well with my stock, okay, over the last 35, 40 years. But this could all go away in a matter of minutes. And I'm not going to get fucked by these people. So I'm just not going to play their game. And I'm going to tell other people what's really going on in the world. And this has been going on quietly since 2008. There's been an undercurrent of this. Many of the honest guys that used to work in investment banking when I was there, they're all gone.
Right.
They got out. They got out because we saw the writing on the wall. They're like, they're gonna fuck these people like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
They just ratchet up markets and elevate them, and then come in and blow the markets up and buy their assets back up pennies on the dollar. In the meantime, all the money that's been invested in those assets during the rise, it gets transferred over to them. And they keep doing this wash, rinse, repeat game over and over and over again. But as long as they do it modestly, it's okay. But when it becomes everybody's doing the same thing all at the same time, it's at some point people are just going to completely lose confidence and not want to play in the game anymore.
Right.
And if they lose the retail investors, then they're left with nothing but the ETFs, the electronic trading funds,
right,
where the machines are just going back and forth. And then eventually the system is so dependent, it's like yin and yang. You cannot have the institutional investors without the retail investors.
Right.
It doesn't work. Because the retail investors think, oh my God, we can do this indefinitely. We found a way to jimmy the system. And the system is like, so what do you do when the complete confidence, because it all is a con game anyway, but when the confidence game just, and now there's no more buyers. You have one party, the central banks around the world, the buyer of last resorts, and inflating assets to well beyond the common person's means of affordability. And they think like, well, we'll just create new jobs. Where are these new jobs? What are you talking about? I see the only jobs I see being created are corporate, these corporate jobs that are these corporations that are benefiting from the credit cards. I don't see restaurants opening up, owner-operated restaurants being open, do you? I mean, occasionally you see one or two, but I used to see them all the time when I was younger. You don't see them that way now.
Nope.
There's a big franchise label on it, right?
Yeah.
Well, what are these companies, where are they getting their money? And yeah, they're getting their money from a lot of really stupid people because they've so brain numbed them down that people just don't really give it a concern. Like, why anybody even goes to a McDonald's today? Are you telling me you don't know that it's all chemicals now, that the burgers don't rot? I mean, what else do they have to do? It's, go to McDonald's, buy a hamburger, keep it in the bag, put it up in your closet, and go open the bag in 6 months and tell me what you see. You're going to see a hamburger that looks exactly the same way it did when you bought it. Now, what do you think that's doing to you when the bacteria and the insects wouldn't even eat it?
Yeah, but it was only like $1.
Doesn't matter. People are eating that shit.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I mean, that's the only thing people care about.
French fries.
How does it taste? How much does it cost?
And if you think well, maybe it's not accurate, all right, go to your grocery store, go buy fresh bread. All right, if you can find like a bakery with organic bread, organic potatoes, whatever. Mm-hmm. Make yourself a hamburger and French fries. You cook it up, put it in a bag like they do with McDonald's, and put that next to the bag of McDonald's food. Put it in your closet for 3 months. All right? Then you open the bag and tell me what you see in the bag that you, with the food you cooked, that you prepared yourself, and the McDonald's food. See, one looks like the same way it did the day you bought it. It's just hard. Mm-hmm. The other one is covered with mold. It's black. It's wilted. It's just, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why are you putting that shit in your body? What do you think that's doing to you? It's a delivery system for chemicals that you were not designed to ingest. Yeah. And that is flowing through you. Is this the reason why people are so stupid?
Oh, well, one of them.
Could be.
One of them.
Yeah, I know I go by a McDonald's by me, and there's people there every day, lines of cars.
I love it. They're loving it.
I'm sure they're open even today, and you go by there, and there'll be cars at the drive-thru. Even on Christmas Day.
Well, I mean, it's still cheap, and they can make it. The taste.
Well, it all is. It's artificial taste, right? It's all chemicals. It's a chemistry lab.
I think people are getting to the point now where you see a lot of people go to, like, you always see a lot of people at the Chipotle. They claim to have, GMO, so they're kind of making people aware that the genetically modified stuff is a thing, and I think your body can tell the difference when you'll eat food and then you don't even think of it, but your body knows, like your brain knows. And then if you go to a place like Chipotle or you eat a higher quality of food, which the media will tell you is no different than McDonald's, your body knows that too. So you start doing these things. You start doing these things because your body knows best. You're just the way you feel, things like that. And then and eventually, I bet you there's a portion of society out there that'll be like, yeah, I used to eat at McDonald's, but now I just eat at like Chipotle, or they'll go to like Chick-fil-A, which I'm pretty sure isn't without its particulars, but
they're just as bad. Don't kid yourself. Just because they claim to be, the guy who runs the company is a Christian. He doesn't open on Sundays.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, I think people know, like, their bodies kind of tell them that they're eating something better, but still, I mean, when you got athletes like LeBron James and Shaq and all these guys throughout, Kobe and all these guys are like, I'm loving it, and they're like McDonald's and all that stuff. It's
they're taking the money. They're selling themselves. They're prostitutes. That's all they are.
Yeah, and don't piss off China.
If they don't remember too. They sign professional athletes sign contracts, endorsement contracts. Mm-hmm. And they have to do so many endorsements if the owner of the team gets paid a lot of money. They get the money back from them. Those guys are total prostitutes. But LeBron James is he is such a whore. It's not even funny. The guy is just so corrupt.
And then he went to L.A. We're going to retire there.
Well, what are you going to do?
Maybe they get to another finals. Who knows? But definitely a talented player. But there's so many bad check marks there that and they're not. None of them are without. I mean, people are prostitutes. They'll sell themselves for money. They sell themselves.
Yeah, multimillionaires sitting around tables, sitting around talking about how they are victims of racism. Like, are you fucking serious, dude? Really? You sit here and you live a life better than 99% of American people, right? Literally 99%. You're in a 1% class, all right? And you're actually going to sit here and you're going to tell that you are a victim of racism.
Yeah, I mean
No, you're not.
They definitely will. The system, a system like this, will take people, just like they do with the LGBTQ and all that other. They will make them. They will manipulate them. And make no mistake, they're definitely manipulating the black people. They make tons of fucking money off of the game of basketball. Mm-hmm. And they will bring these athletes in, and they will develop them, and and then they will make them into superstars. Sometimes they're better than sometimes they're Michael Jordans, sometimes they're LeBron James. Mm-hmm. But they need to understand as well that. Because, that they have an incredible amount of power, too, once they get in there. Because if they don't realize that they're being used to enslave other people, then they're just as much as shit as the most fucking scumbag white guy out there or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Well, that's precisely it. He's showing himself to be a vile excuse for a human being. Mm-hmm. Because, in reality, he should be talking about how this is, if he was honest, he'd be saying, nowhere else in the world would I be able to live a life like this. But I don't know. He is treated as royalty wherever he goes.
Yeah.
Right. He is, and he's been that way for literally his entire life.
Because he plays basketball. If he wasn't a basketball player, he would be just another black guy.
Yeah, well, so what?
If Larry Bird didn't play basketball, he'd just be another white guy.
That's right. So he would be like, so he's going to sit there and say that he's a victim of racism? Really? Sorry. It doesn't jive.
Well, and again, if they don't play the card, then they're going to be seen as possible sellouts of their own race. So there's always that.
The one thing you notice, like last season, remember he made that comment about Jew money, and he had to sit out a few weeks, and they claimed like an injury and stuff like that to make it go away.
I don't remember that. You have to send that to
me. He said he's got to get that Jew money, all right? And so.
Well, they'll say a lot of things behind closed doors, and then they get.
He knows. He's not stupid. They put him on. They gave him that HBO show where he sits in a barbershop and they all sit around with other black guys and Jon Stewart talking about the social problems of the world, as if these movie stars and professional athletes
are going to solve all.
Or any way it can relate to any suffering going on in the world today.
They could solve a lot by just coming clean and saying whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and they'll sit around and talk about talking with Jon Stewart, who's Jon Stewart, and his real name is Leibowitz, and his father was a member of the New York Stock Exchange, one of the ranking members of the New York Stock Exchange. He's one of the richest men.
Yeah,
okay,
that's why he got his.
Right. It's all just like he's just a front man. Like, oh, what are we going to do with this kid? He doesn't really have the acumen to work on Wall Street. Let's make him a comedian.
I can't balance my checkbook. We'll put him on Comedy Central.
Right. We'll give him a show, and we'll make him a movie star and all this stuff. Like, really? Seriously? And so they gave him a shtick, and, you practice something long enough, you get pretty good at it.
I mean, he
gives the appearance of being good at it.
Within the last 3 or 4 months, he did that thing where he went to Congress and was saying, "Where's all the money for these 9/11 guys?" Most of them people didn't show up. Most of the scumbag politicians didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they were interviewing him afterwards, he said, "Yeah, we're going to do more with this." And he said, "And after that, we're going to start talking about the burn pits." Which is another big thing that it brought to the surface, but not obviously it won't be by the state-run media. By the state-run media, the burn pits won't be talked about.
Ask yourself the question now, Jon Stewart. Why is Jon Stewart talking about this?
I wonder.
You think he really has any concern over the guys? The people.
I think he does.
I know people. I have a friend of mine that I went to high school with who was in construction, and he worked in the World Trade Center cleanup. And he got MS. His father died. He's very, 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 very bad way.
Wow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of all the stuff that he was doing there. And it's like, okay, somebody finally doing it, but do you think he did this on his own? It's like, no. We need to have somebody out there doing it, but let's let Jon Stewart do it. Jon Stewart, who the fuck is he? I mean, really, seriously, the guy on Comedy Central? No, Jon Stewart,
if he's not doing this and seriously trying to help these people, then fuck him. But if he is,
He's doing it for public relations. He's not doing it because he gives a shit about any of those guys. You really think he cares about them? Come on.
I want to think that he does, but
no.
There's only a little bit of humanity left in me, please.
He has to make it look good because the amount of negative stuff that's going on with all the Leibowitzes and the Steins and everything going on out there is just, it's growing and growing and growing, and it's fomenting under the surface. So they have to we need somebody that can go forward who's got the street creds to do it. Well, none of the guys at he's an entertainer, so he's the jackal of the group, right? And so, all right, put him out there. He's a recognized face. He's retired now, so let him have this kind of cause. It'll make us look good. We could always say, well, we don't hate the goyim. Look at Jon Stewart. Look at John Leibowitz. When John Leibowitz basically, where he could say, if I really care about the guys, he's got enough money, believe me, and his family, they have enough money that he could basically take $100 billion out of the We Live Foundation and donate it to all the guys that are suffering. Right? Why is he going to the government to do it? Because they're going to monetize it. He represents a banker. Okay, his father sits on his father did before he died. I don't think his father's alive anymore. Which means that he sits on the board of the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, I think his brother, probably the whole family is involved.
It's a whole family.
I heard his brother, but then it probably goes way back to his dad.
Okay, it goes back to this goes back to the Buttonwood Tree Agreement signed in 1793. All right, that this was a group of men who would trade stocks and bonds and use the public's money, and they were never allowed to screw each other. It's a club. These guys are trillionaires, all right? And he represents one of the most wealthy, powerful families, the ones where we talk about the oligarchs. He is an oligarch. So he's up there talking to Congress. He's basically saying, you guys are going to pay these people money. You're going to go through our family banks to do it. Okay, go through the bonds, boom, 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 and we're all going to get paid. That's it. He doesn't give two shits about Goyim out there, if Goyim are out there sucking up like asbestos dust and dying in 10 years, he's laughing about it.
No!
That's all. He's not a common guy who grew up in meager means and is concerned about his fellow man at all. He's an actor.
We're all fucked.
The media shows them.
Festivus.
They put it on the alt media, and the alt media just sucks it up. Oh wow, this is great. This is wonderful. We got a good Jew we can point to. And it's like, you know what? It's wrong. There are a lot of good people out there that they could go to. They don't need to go to some, the son of one of the top people in the New York City. His father, I think, was the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, he's got twice his power. It means all the other Jews that sit on the board voted him as president.
There's no hope. There's no hope in change. Obama, help us.
Right.
Tom Cruise, help us. Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, please.
He can go to one of the banks. He could go to Goldman Sachs and say, "You guys going to cough up $1 billion to help these guys out?" Do you think they would even be concerned about $1 billion? Yeah, okay. What do we get out of it? Well, we're gonna make you look good. You're not gonna be you're not gonna be the killer squid anymore. We're gonna make you out to be a real altruistic organization. Now they're so brazen that they don't even want to part with their perception of being non-vampires, non-octopus, or killer squids. Now they just simply they sit before their trade association and say, "You guys create the money to do it." And nobody asks him, like, "Okay, well, Mr. Stewart, let me ask you a question. According to what we see here, your father is set as president of the New York Stock Exchange. Could you open and disclose the books?" Oh, no, that's all part of a foundation. That's all sealed. So are you telling us here that you are a member of one of the richest families, one of the richest oligarch families in the world today, with influence and control over trillions and trillions of dollars around the world, and you're coming to this body asking us to create another couple of $1 billion for this pet project of yours? Why don't you do it on your own, sir? But the politicians are up there saying, "Yeah, that's another $3 billion we can monetize. I get a half a point on that."
Oh.
That's why it's like Nancy Pelosi and the rest of these people. They go into Congress and they get there and they retire. When they do finally retire, they got fucking millions.
I am not a hateful person. I am not.
You ask most people and say, "Did that come from illegal grafts and stuff like that?" Some of it did, but a small part of it. They don't have to do that now, because now they're in line as the brokers. They are representing their sellers and buyers' mandates. That's all they are. It's a club. And that's why when you drive through Washington, D.C. now, in the D.C. area, all the cranes and construction going on, all that's been monetized. All of it. None of it's from organic growth and demand. It's just like, well, we can borrow another $200 billion to build a skyscraper. Let's do it. Well, do we have tenants? Nah, don't worry about the tenants. Who cares? We got this credit card. Happy days. We got infinite wealth. We could just build to the moon. We don't care. Well, who's going to occupy all this space? Are we really growing that much? You know what? We'll do it. We'll put it in a foundation. We'll write it off as a loss, and we'll lease it off for pennies on a square foot. Yeah, but you're charging everybody else $30, $40 a square foot for the space. I mean, you're gonna rent it off to a lobbying company and for 40 cents a square foot? Yeah, nobody will know. Who cares? We got the credit card. Doesn't matter.
So what? Who cares?
Who cares? What are you getting at? What's your angle? Nobody ever asks these politicians, "What's your angle? What's your cut?" Of course, if they did, they would be, "Oh, this is out of order." You're making accusations, blah, blah, blah. No. We live in a system of monetization and hypothecation. And basically, you guys are acting as brokers. So tell us what your fees are. Nobody has Bernie Sanders. How much do you get out of the $14 trillion Medicare for All bill you're trying to get done? Which Trump is the mother of all monetization.
The worst man ever in the world, and everybody that he touches will die from leprosy. And I tell you now, that's what he would change the topic.
Totally.
How would you make it?
Completely change the subject.
I want to say that I would. Is that my heart? Boom.
You know, and guess what? That could be a setup too. Oh, he had a heart attack. He's right back on the campaign trail. Yeah, right. Bullshit. Okay, it's a staged heart attack because if it ever shit does hit the fan, he could always be like, "Oh, poor Bernie Sanders died today."
How about that friggin' what's her face? Elizabeth Warren. Is she retarded? I'm going to get a beer.
Yeah.
Did you see her when she was like, "I'm going to get a beer"? Did you see that video?
I'm going to get a beer.
She made like a YouTube video or something like that. She was just like, you know what? I think I'm going to have a beer. And then her husband's in the room. She's like, you want a beer? And he's like, no, I'm good. She said, well, I'm going to have a beer. And she sits there and she takes a sip of it. And then, you know, she's trying to endear herself to the any retard out there that would vote for her.
Right.
I mean, anybody who would vote for anybody in this fucking corrupt bag of shit system is really needs to have their fucking head examined. But it was just weird. It's just really weird. And then her on stage with that Pete Buttigieg, he's like, he had some kind of gathering or something where they were charging a lot of money, and it was like, we've got to get everyone together with any means necessary to be able to defeat Donald Trump. And Pete Buttigieg. And then she just stood there like a deer in headlights. But she's
Pete Buttigieg.
I just can't even begin. I can't even.
It's all a joke. I mean, the fact that even a Buttigieg is even in this race, but he was just a mayor of Gary, Indiana.
No,
it's a mayor. Not even. That's it.
The mayor of South Bend. South Bend.
Right, small city.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But he's
gay
got,
mayor of a small city. Like
he was
in the military.
Experience to be able to do what it needs to be able to beat the Trump stern.
Oh, sure. Which is just laughable because it's just a beta test. It's like, how far can we push down? But we need to have we need to get the fag up there, a real legitimate fag instead of the Obamas. You know, the closet fag. Let's put the real fag up there and see what we can get. We'll push this. And he's getting all this money from all these people. It's like, seriously, dude, come on. You know, nobody's buying it. You know, the media promotes it as if people are. But I don't know what's
ridiculous is that anybody who's watching this who still thinks that their vote counts when these people are having these events that are like $1,000 a plate and all that stuff, it's like, you're not even in the mix here. You're not even in the mix. They're not even thinking about you. They don't care about you. This is it's an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke. And then anybody who sits up there and thinks that any one of these people up here should be in any role of power whatsoever, it's like they're absolutely not living in reality. And you can hear most of these people that, these people that think that, Warren is this or Sanders or anything. It's just a joke. It's just a big joke. And now with Bloomberg in there, that's, I mean, he's got money. He's got Trump money and maybe more. So is it him and the Berg of Bloom?
Oh,
going to be standing up there.
Who knows what's going on? It just shows you more like Okay, it's the war shit show. Here we go.
And then, of course, if he does become the Democratic guy, and he's standing up there, and it's just like money, all his money, and now he's up there. It's like you out there living paycheck to paycheck. Do you think these people actually fucking care about you? Do you think they actually give a shit about you? Really?
You're expendable, believe me. And he's there to create the wars, to get rid of as many of you as possible, to oversee the depopulation phase of all this. Because depopulation is coming. And it's like, it's going to come from, a destructive means or a non-destructive means. And I think now they're like, maybe we have to do this in a non-destructive way. But they got to thin the herd because they're looking at it themselves and going, there's nothing you could do with these people. What are you going to do with them? It's not even feasible to have this.
That's right.
I guess if you are, one of their, part of their group, it's just like you look at the communist revolution in Russia. They use people until they achieve power, and then they wipe out all the people that support them, brought them in, because they're like, you just use. You know what? Once you figure it out that you've been fucked, you're going to rise against me, so we might as well kill you. And they're doing it's wash and repeat.
That's what they do with the veterans. That's why the veterans are homeless and everything. They're not giving people that they've trained killers. They're not gonna give a shit about the trained killers.
There's also a lot of veterans out there, and I do not buy into the military thing. Okay, but I understand, and I know guys that have.
Right.
I'm friends with quite a few of them, and believe me, there is an underculture that they're already warning these people. Like, look, don't try it. If you think that you're gonna rise up against, you got 3 million, trained killers out there. They're going to take out, snipers will take out all your planes. You'll never get your birds off the ground. If you can't take the high ground and control the skies, then you stand no chance. And they're all communicating and talking to each other through ham radio. So, forget about trying to track these guys because you can't track that shit. All right. So they go back to the old means. So you're saying that if they're going to try something, that there's actual people that will resist. There's a whole resistance infrastructure already in place. People have been, everything is all coordinated. What, to fight against some kind of to fight against the actual New World establishment itself. A New World Order, right? Well, just to give it a name. Just to give it a name for people out there. There's people that are basically going to try a coup within the United States to take away people's, to basically bring about this authoritarian system. Right. It's like the line's been drawn in the sand, and the warning shots have already been fired. Like, we'll take you out. It doesn't matter. I mean, you trained all these guys to go over and fight wars. What do you think they're doing? Well, they're still practicing. Yeah. You only need 3 snipers around a military base to take out all the planes. You don't have to kill anybody just with a 50 millimeter round, put it through an engine. That plane ain't flying. That bird's on the ground.
System of systems. I will MK Ultra ya. Put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57 millimeter Mark 110. 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list. That's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum. Some perform shock and awe on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary. For the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran. That's rich, that's a bitch. Now we gotta teach a lesson to them. Stick you in the database. When you get out of line, we can put you back in place. Do you fathom what the action takes to advance? We have to dress you up in satin lace. The human race was systematically debased. Set up to be on
down the